Hello, folks. Today we are going to learn the webbing process for writing your big essays. Now, you've probably done webbing before, but we are going to show you the whole process to go from the basic web, which you've probably done, all the way to a good, solid college level English thesis. Now, to get this for us as class, we're going to start with something pretty broad. When you're doing this by yourself, you're probably going to have a little more focused in. So we're going to start with entertainment, something we could all think about, know something about. So start with the topic in the center, and off that you branch off. So for us, entertainment, the things you do for entertainment. You might play games, movies, books, music, stuff on the internet, outdoor activities, sports. You see those are still pretty broad. Off those, it branches out and connects, hence the fact that it's a web and not a tree. You'll notice that things like games connect to internet. You could connect internet to just about anything. You connect it to music, you can read ebooks from the internet, movies, you can watch streaming movies, watch sports, even play some sports on the internet. So off music, you have the genres of music: rap, R&B, country, death rock, country. uh, Off concerts, then you have the venues that you might go to. So it can go out, and it should go out. This will look messy. That's perfectly fine. Don't worry if it's messy. Get it out on the page. Uh, the idea is get as much information out as possible. Don't worry if it's good or not, because even a dumb idea might lead to something that actually is a really good high level, college level paper. So after you're done, whole web, fill the page with as much information as possible. You look and, okay, which area in that am I most interested in? So when we did this in another class, I decided, you know what, the horror movie stuff is what we're really interested in. So then you take that, flip over a new page on your notebook, put here we put horror movies in the center, and then you do a reweb. This will really help focus in your topic. Sometimes, if you're in a high level topic and you already are focused, you might not have to do the reweb, but most of the time at our level 101 and 102, we do need to do this reweb. And again, fill the page with as much information as possible. The more information you have here at this stage, the easier the next stages will be. So then, after you've done all these webs, reweb, then you come up with some questions. Any questions that came into your head, they don't have to directly relate to what you've written down. So we had, what is the best horror movie? Who directed Saw 3? Are the older horror movies better than the new ones? Why are horror movies scary? Is Alfred Hitchcock overrated? Why do horror movies always have to show breasts and sex? How much money does horror make? Why do people like horror? You'll see at this stage, it's still really a brainstorming stage of the questions. Get the information out, get the questions out, worry whether they're good or not later. So after you come up with a whole bunch of questions, then you can start looking at, do these make good questions that will lead to a good paper? What's the best horror movie? Is that arguable? Maybe. And a couple people who liked that in the previous class. Who directed Saw 3? Well, that's one sentence. I forget the person's name, but this person directed Saw 3. That's it. You're not going to write a whole essay on that, and it's not debatable. Are the older horror movies better than the new ones? That might be debatable. Why are horror movies so scary? Maybe. Look at that. You might be able to bring in evidence and support. Is Alfred Hitchcock overrated? That could be debatable. Why do horror movies always have to show breasts and sex? Well, they don't all have that aspect. You know, when we did this in class, we, off the top of our head, came up with a whole bunch of movies that didn't have breasts or any sexual content. So we know that's not true. And even if it's like, you know what, I don't want to delve into that, that's not what I'm interested in, you can cross it off for that reason as well. How much money does horror make? That's also pretty narrow. You can look at imdb.com and say, well, this is how much horror movies made at the box office in 2016. Boom, there you go. Not really that debatable, not really argumentative. Why do people like horror? That might be a little debatable. We talked about it in class. Like, well, because they like to be scared in a safe environment. Well, that ties into why are they scary. Now, some, like, what is the best horror movie? Is it debatable? Maybe. Is it arguable using expert opinions, facts, data? Not so much. It's really just opinion. So things that are opinion might work for just like an opinion paper, like if you're writing a review or something, but that's not what we're doing. We're writing an argumentative essay. So same with are the older horror movies better than the new ones? It's really more opinion. Same with, is Alfred Hitchcock overrated? So the ones that are, yeah, they're kind of arguable, but more opinion, won't really work. So why are horror movies scary? We reworked that a little bit. What makes? Now we're looking, okay, what are the criteria that make horror movies scary? The next step, we can look back at our webbing, and you might add more to your webbing at this stage. That's perfectly fine. And then, okay, what makes horror movies scary? And we just listed. You notice a bunch of these aren't on there, on the web. That's fine. What makes horror movies scary? And we just brainstormed what makes a horror movie scary. Clowns, sound and music, lighting and shadow, the timing of the scares. The old movies, you could literally sit there with a stopwatch from the time the music came up to the time the knife went in was 9 seconds. Now they've messed with that in more recent years, but that music comes up, knife goes in, or the monster pops out or whatever was a very standard trope. Special effects help make it scary. Graveyards and castles, blood and guts, crazy people, camera work, weirdly barking dogs, old people, abandoned villages, aliens, scary, dolls, whether it's voodoo or Chucky. Then after looking at them, okay, clowns, crazy people, dogs, they're characters, even if they're not humans, old people, aliens, dolls, they're really talking about the scary characters. You don't need to list clowns specifically in our thesis. The weirdly barking dog, well, that's said partly a character, so it goes partly with that. You might talk about the scary dogs, and the sound of the barking would go into the sound and music. So you can put that there. Lighting and shadow, really, camera work really combines with that. There's a lot of what makes it scary in regards to cinematography is how the camera is positioned, also the lighting and use of shadow all ties together. Special effects, well, the blood and guts are really an aspect of the special effects. The timing of the scares, another thing that helps make it scary, especially with the jump scares. Graveyards and castles, abandoned villages, the scary places. So the setting is also important. So, what makes a horror movie scary? Then we have, after we combine stuff, the scary characters, spooky settings, sound and music, timing of scares, camera work and cinematography, so we combine those, and special effects. Now, so you know what? The timing of scares is really tied in a lot with the sound and the music. The camera work and the cinematography is really to establish that spooky setting. So we can talk about camera work and cinematography in the chunk of our essay where we talk about spooky settings. So now we have horror movies are scary, taken aside because of their scary characters, spooky settings, sound and music, and special effects. 4 main ideas, different colors. So we take our side, horror movies are scary. Other people say, no, they're not scary, and we have our reasons. It's in the form of a statement. It answers a question, is not in the form of a question. Takes a stand on that topic, which is arguable and has the right scope for a college-level essay. It answers the why do we care? It's like, well, if you like horror movies, this might be something you're interested in. Is this something you want to spend the entire semester on? Well, maybe the answer is no. Maybe you don't really think for an English 102 essay that there's really something you can delve deeply into. So we go, okay, I'm interested in horror movies. Let's go back, brainstorm some more. What are some problems with horror movies? There's not enough boobies. Too few horror movies, too graphic, not enough blood and gore. See, you're just brainstorming. So even though these are contradictory, that's fine for this stage. People think they're trash. They can cause people to be desensitized to violence, entices people to kill. Well, not enough boobies. That's not really college level, and it's opinion anyway. There are too few horror movies. Well, you look at IMDb.com and say, really, there are a lot of horror movies. Too graphic? Well, the reason why you might think they're too graphic is people think they're trash, and one of the reasons why is because they're too graphic. People think it can desensitize people to violence. That's part of why they say it is trash, and it entices people to kill. Well, if you're desensitized to violence, you might kill. So that all ties into that people, you don't need specifically what people, but they think horror movies aren't worth anything. It's like, you know what? I think they do serve a legitimate social purpose. So you're going to take a stand on that. And the not enough blood and gore is like, well, many are quite the opposite. Not all, but so again, we had our coming up with our brainstorming, and then how can we prove horror movies are valuable, serve a legitimate social purpose? So they can help people explore issues. You can figure out later, okay, what types of issues, but they uphold morality, because usually the good vanquishes the bad in the end. Shows social justice, the bad guys always vanquished. So, and they provide cheap thrills, added that this stage. So, well, bad guys always vanquished is really ties directly into social justice. The cheap thrills, it's like, well, we want to look at the other side, that it's not just cheap thrills, but we'll remember that when we do our rebuttal chunk. Issues. Said, well, what types of issues? Psychological issues, your inner thoughts, that really ties into psychological, or the intellectual issues, more high-minded. So then we get horror films don't just exist to provide cheap thrills. We've taken a side. They allow viewers to explore psychological, intellectual, and moral issues and serve a legitimate social purpose. So now we have something that's in the form of a statement, not a question. Answers that question, though. How do they serve legitimate social purpose? Takes a stand on the topic. It's arguable. You can bring in expert opinions, psychological studies, experts on moral issues. You can show example movies and bring that in. All that stuff. You have an arguable thesis that you can actually back up. That's important. All that comes down. All that pre-writing stuff comes down to a solid thesis. And now we've got a solid thesis. You can write a solid essay. Without a solid thesis, you cannot have a good essay. And then after you've got your thesis, you can start outlining, okay, how am I going to set that up? But we're going to talk more about that in class next week.